Chapter 28. How do you mix your colors? The Japanese lady asked softly, raising her eyebrows and fixing me with her gaze. It's very easy, I replied. I do it as the mood takes me. Her husband was studying a painting. You have a unique style, he said, fingering the strap to which his glasses were tied. He examined the canvas more closely. The color combinations are very subtle, he said. You mix colors as if mixing milk and water. It looks so natural, doesn't it? The woman agreed. The language of color depends on the eye of the viewer, I said, then realizing they weren't very fluent in English. Realizing they weren't very fluent in English, I rephrased the sentence, putting the idea more simply and slowly. Colors depend on the way you see them. They nodded their heads in agreement and began to speak between themselves softly in Japanese. They reminded me of pairs of swallows sweeping on the edge of a nest of clay. When I realized they were happy wandering through my gallery on their own, I left them and went to another room. I like explaining art to Nepalese more than to foreigners. It's even more satisfying if they are young. Foreigners visiting art galleries already have set taste and the ability to appreciate art, but very few Nepalese do that. Very few Nepalese visit art galleries for a start. The husband came up to me and pointed to PALPASA Cafe. This painting looks like a painting of a dream project. You are right, I said. That's my future. I want to build an art center based on this design. He looked intrigued. Great, he said. You have expressed yourself so well in this whole series. I like this series best because I can see it so suffering but also hope. What could I tell him? I had finished the Palpasa series long ago, yet it seemed I had only started it yesterday. It was my best work. The reason every visitor's eye is drawn to it is because I had poured myself onto these canvases, holding nothing back. If you don't mind, I would like to ask you a question, the wife said. Do your paintings sell? Society here is yet to develop a real appreciation for art, I said as she raised her eyebrows in surprise. People have don't really recognize art. Those with money buy expensive paintings, but they don't care if they are good or bad. They assume paintings will give their homes prestigious simply because they are expensive. She asked, but isn't it a good sign that people with money choose to buy paintings? There aren't many people with money in our country, I said, and those who do have money are busy advertising the fact. They don't understand the responsibility that money brings. Being rich isn't just a question of having money, but what you choose to do with it. Money is a source of power. Wealthy people who are wise don't become slaves to their money. The wise use their money well. I see, she said not. Some rich people who those who have seen the world just see paintings as objects hanging on the wall to increase the value of their houses. I said most don't see art as an essential part of their lives. For them, paintings are just part of a lifestyle or a fashion. But surely that's just the stage your society is going through, she said. I said, to be able to make one's life more beautiful, one must first appreciate beauty. You are right, she said. Only beautiful hearts recognize beautiful paintings. I said, for instance, people like you. You have looked at my paintings with so much interest and now you are asking me about my art. She blushed and went to the room where her husband was. Again, they began to speak between themselves in Japanese. I could hear swallows chirping again. Then she came back. But you also want your painting to be bought. Of, of course, I said, this is my livelihood. So, does that mean that you make paintings that will have a market? That's a good question, I should. But ultimately, I think the answer's no. Why not? If I painted with the aim of selling my work, I wouldn't be an artist, I said. I'd be a manufacturer. She nodded and went back to the other room. She went to my desk, switched on my computer, poured some hot water into a glass, and put some coffee in it. The coffee Laure Kaka had given me had the fragrance of the heel, a fragrance that always moved me. Was this a strength of a weakness? Whatever it was, the fragrance affected me deeply. I couldn't free myself from the spell. I felt the heels tugging at me as if I were a kite on a string. The heels were ancient, and I was, after all, a product of the heel. Our bond was deep, though I lived in Kathmandu. The hills were inside me, and the distance between us didn't weaken our bond. The hills had captured me when I was a child, and I had never be free of them. After checking my emails, I made a few phone calls. Then I put the newspaper out in the sun. The delivery boy had brought them wet that day. I had been moved by a news story I had read recently. I was thinking of doing a painting based on it. That story came with a picture. The picture was a man Maya, a 70-year-old woman. This picture prevented me from working on my other painting. The picture showed the old woman walking towards her district's headquarters after the Maoist People's Court had ordered her to leave her village. Manma's daughter-in-law had told the Maoist about some problems she was having with her mother-in-law. Tension between in-law is a common problem in many households, but in this case, the People's Court had taken action against the old woman, ordering her to leave the village within 7 days. Even the daughter-in-law had appealed against the sentence as she hadn't expected it to be so harsh, but the verdict couldn't be overturned. A journalist met Manmaya on her way to the district headquarters. She was carrying only a small bag. The wrinkles on her face were filled with rivulets of tears. Old and stooped, she was making her way towards an uncertain future. When I saw the picture in the newspaper, I recognized my hill. People had been climbing up and down this hill for centuries, but Manmaya's journey was a different one. I wanted to start a painting called Old Woman Coming Down a Mountain, based on the press photo, but still hadn't managed to put even online on canvas. I had to start working on it day as the days passed. The inspiration would fade and my energy would dissipate. I kept the newspaper cutting beside me, looking at it now and then. I always become tearful when I looked at the photo of the old woman. She had already been walking for 2 days when the picture was taken and still had to walk another afternoon to reach her destination. Do you have any relatives in the district headquarters? The journalist had asked her. I hope there's someone there I know, she replied. Such punishment at such an old age. At least they didn't sentence me to death. I won't lie to you, my son. My daughter in law realized she had been wrong and asked them to change the verdict, but finally I left my own volition. I was too scared to stay. Who isn't scared of them? As I read the newspaper cutting, someone knocked at the gallery door. Wait a second, I called. I called out. Before answering the door, I took a cup of coffee to the Japanese woman. She wanted to buy my book and asked the price. I showed her the price on the cover. She took out a calculator and converted it to yen. Then her husband joined us and talked about some maple tree changing color with the season. Do you remember? He said to his wife. Last year we climbed the hill just as the maple tree were beginning to lose their leaves. So many people are there just to see the red hills. The wife explained to me the hills where we live change color. First they are green, then red, then yellow, and white when they are covered with snow, I added. Yes, that's right, 4 seasons in a year and a color of each season. Her husband said, I can see a relationship between the hills, the seasons, and the colors you use in your painting. That's the basic of your work. Am I right? Absolutely, I said. I grew up with the colors, the flowers, painted the hills. Again, there was a knock at the door. As I left the door to answer, the lady asked me, "Which painting are you most satisfied with?" "None," I said. "If I am ever satisfied with any of my work, I won't have the drive to do better. I don't think my artist is ever really satisfied." When I opened the door, I saw five strangers. "Come in, sit down," I said. I led them in, pointing towards the sofa. I took a chair opposite them, a chair which I had ordered from Taiwan a year ago and which was already getting risky if the men were carpenters. I had asked them to fix it. "Who are you?" I asked, but they didn't answer. I could guess from the men's appearance that they weren't art lovers. They didn't introduce themselves to me. They looked around the gallery and I could tell they weren't looking at the painting. A painter can read the audience. The men's dress alone made it clear they had no interest in art. I felt a little awkward. "Is there anything I can do for you?" I asked finally. A man wearing a white shirt replied curtly, "We have come to ask you a few things." "What things?" I asked, getting nervous. "We also came to get to know you," another said more politely. But he didn't look at me as he spoke, and his evasiveness disturbed me. Another man began looking at the calendar on which I had marked a few dates. Yet another looked lost, starting blankly at the canvas on the wall. Looking at painting is one thing, I thought, but understanding them is a different matter. When I realized they weren't going to leave quickly, I asked, "Would you like some coffee?" The first man said quietly, "We are security personnel." I was taken back, but I tried not to look worried. The Japanese couple was still in the gallery and I didn't want to upset them. So I asked calmly, "We have come to ask you a few things." "What things?" I asked. "You have to come with us," one man said. "Where?" Another man stepped closer to me and said forcefully, "Just come with us." I began to tremble but made an effort to appear calm. "I have got work to do," I said. "I can't come now. As you see, there are visitors in the gallery. Appointment. We made an appointment. I am too busy to go now." Just then my mobile phone rang. It was a friend. I had made an appointment with him as well, and he was waiting for me in a rooftop restaurant. I told him I would be there soon and asked him to order me something. I didn't tell him about the situation I was in. I didn't even give him a hint. As I hung up, I realized that was a mistake. The first man said, "You can finish your work when you get back." "How long will it take?" I asked. "I can't just leave my visitors like this," another man said. "Just come." Brushing aside my concern, he looked through the door into the room where the Japanese couple was talking to each other. "I don't mean to be uncooperative," I said politely, "but it isn't clear to me what you want from me." "What do you mean?" one man snarled. "Are you here to arrest me?" "No, exactly," the first man said. "So, understanding it this way," another man said, "we have come to take you with us." "Child," I said, "if you have come to take me, you must have a warrant for my arrest." "This discussion is pointless," one of the men said threateningly. "We want to ask you a few questions." "So ask your questions here," I insisted. "You haven't even shown me your identity card. If you could ask our questions here, we wouldn't be telling you to come with us," the second man snapped. I saw then a revolver inside his shirt. The man examining the calendar also appeared to have a gun. "I have to tell my people," I said, moving towards the plane. One of the men stopped me. "Don't try to be clever," she said. Desperately, I said, "Listen, Amnesty International has placed Nepal at the top of the list of countries with the highest rates of civilian disappearances. All human rights groups are keeping an eye on Nepal. The man growled, "Don't talk like that, people who chase US dollar. What will these tourists think?" I protested. "We don't care." "But tourist arrivals are different," I said desperately. "What will my visitors think if they see me being taken away like this, right in front of their eyes? They will never come back to Nepali." Finally, one of the men took me by the arm. "Stop talking, move." They wouldn't even let me shut down my computer. There was still some coffee in my cup. As I was going down the stairs, the Japanese man followed me and asked the price of the PALPASA series. "Sorry," I said. "That's priceless." "You haven't decided on a price," he said, not understanding me. "I may never decide on a price," I said. "Then how can I buy it?" "Forgive me," I said, trying to make him understand. "That series isn't for sale. You can take me any of the other paintings, but not those." He was puzzled as I left with the men. Could he tell I was being first to go? I didn't want to tell him what was happening. What use would it be if I told him I was being abducted? I didn't want to see the distress on his face. We reached the street, the five men guarding me closely. I wondered whether any of the people passing by could tell I was being abducted. If only I'd ran into someone I knew, I would have been able to say something. After crossing a square where a bomb had exploded a few days earlier, the man took me to a van. I got in meekly. I remembered a cart puller who had been killed in that explosion. He had been loading his cart, his little daughter beside him. She had survived by sheer luck. I spent that entire day in my gallery, thinking about the man and his girlfriend. The child's shining eyes haunting me. The van had moved less than 100 meters down the road when two of men pushed my head down towards my knees and blindfolded me. No one could see me in that van. I didn't know where I was being taken or why. I didn't care where they took me. I only hoped it would have a window. All I wanted was to be able to tell day from night.